Hey everyone, I want to welcome you to my kitchen. And actually, this is my very favorite spot in my whole apartment because the table that I'm standing at now is my dough table. Um, the only thing that happens on this surface is making doughs. That could be bread doughs, pasta doughs, maybe sometimes some cookie doughs, but that's all that happens here is work with dough. So standing near this table in a black shirt is actually a pretty dangerous thing for me, given there's just a solid coating of flour on this table. But that's all right. So coming to you from my kitchen this afternoon to share with you one of my favorite bread recipes. This is one of the first bread recipes I ever made. It's a no-knead crispy bread, and so it's one of those loaves that you get a nice crust on the outside, but inside it is light, it's airy, it's got all those great air pockets, and it's just a great solid loaf of bread. What I like about this recipe is that you can make this recipe as one loaf, or you can divide your dough into 6 parts and have 6 individual rolls, which are really great for sandwiches and things like that. Um, let's see. What else do I love about this bread? So this bread, what makes this bread special and how it gets that crispy crust with the airy dough inside, is that you actually cook it in a Dutch oven. If you don't have a Dutch oven, you can cook it in any oven-safe pot with a lid, or if you've got a pizza stone or something like that, you put the pizza stone in, and then just some sort of oven-safe bowl to cover it. Um, so that's what's great about it, and this bread could not be easier to make. It's really simple. It's 4 ingredients, little work. It's no knead, so you can save your upper body strength for another activity. But so here we go. We're gonna make some bread together. So this bread has 4 ingredients. It's got some flour, some kosher salt, some yeast, and some warm water. So in my bowl here, I've got measured out 3 cups of all-purpose flour. I'm going to add to that 2.5 teaspoons of kosher salt. When I first found the recipe, it made a really strong point to make sure that you're using kosher salt and not table salt. I don't know why. I'm sure it's a chemical reaction thing, but kosher salt. You're going to use a half a teaspoon of yeast. I'm a big fan of the active dry yeast, Fleshman's, or however you say that, but available at kind of any grocery store. And you're going to go ahead and mix that in. Make sure you get all that yeast in, because otherwise your bread's not going to rise properly. All right, so there's my yeast. And then you're going to mix in slowly 1.5 cups of warm water. If you've got a kitchen thermometer, go ahead and use it, because you want your water to be somewhere around 105 degrees. And then you're just going to pour it in a little bit at a time. And yeah, you want to be careful to not overwork this as you get this water incorporated, because the more you work your dough, the more you're going to lose that airiness, and the denser the bread's going to get. So this is really easy. It's totally something you could do with your kids, or an adult who is not very crafty in the kitchen, because it is really hard to mess this recipe up. All right, so we're just about set here. Get the waters, everything nice. Everything just nice and incorporated together. Make sure you get all the bits on the sides of the bowl, at the bottom of the bowl. Yeah, I think that's looking pretty good there. Gonna get all the dough off my spoon. I like to use a wooden spoon for this, because my grandmother always used wooden spoons, but also you want to not use anything metallic. I'm sure like a silicone or plastic would be fine, but sometimes metallic spoons can actually impart a little bit of a metally, metallic taste to it. So, so there you go. So what your dough is going to look like when it's ready to go is something like this, where it's just like kind of got this little, like, it's a little shaggy, barely together, just a little shaggy. There's your dough. And then, once your dough is ready, You're gonna cover it with some cling wrap, saran wrap, cling film, whatever. I watch a lot of British baking shows, so I'm gonna call it cling form. You want to make sure it's nice and tight. So and so actually, because I'm a little extra sometimes, even though I am sure this cling wrap is on and it's nice and tight, this is hard to do with doughy hands. I actually always, in addition to that, I mean, that's like drum ready there. But in addition to the cling wrap, I always grab an extra large rubber band and just put that on there just to make sure that it stays nice and taut. So now you're gonna let that yeast and that water and that flour and salt all do its thing, and this is gonna prove for 8 to 24 hours. So when you make this bread, it's really good to either as something to make the day before, at least get the dough ready the day before, or if you want it for dinner, to get it going early in the morning when you get up, making breakfast, making coffee, whip that together, and then and let it sit. You want it to rise in a draft-free place. So I actually generally just, if I'm not using it, let mine just sit in the oven. So so there it is. That dough is resting, and the magic is happening. I mean, it's scientific, the yeast, the chemical reaction, yada yada, but you know, it's the magic. The magic is happening, and we'll come back to this in 8 to 24 hours to shape the dough and talk about how it actually is going to go and cook in the oven. So there you go. Go make your dough, and we'll see you back here in a few hours. Hey friends, welcome back to my kitchen and my pasta and bread factory, as one friend likes to refer to this spot. So our dough has proved it's now ready to shape. Let it have another quick rest before it's time to go to the oven. So first, let's take a look at our dough. So my dough here has been proving for approximately 22 hours or so. Remember, this is a dough that you're going to prove for between 8 and 24 hours. If you go a little bit over, that's okay. I've experimented at all different times, and I don't notice a discernible difference, whether it's 8 hours on the dot or 27 hours. But to give you an idea, here's what your dough is going to look like after it's proved. You can see that in those air pockets, you can see how it's pulling away, that airiness. That's really important because that's what's going to give the crumb, that's what's going to give that interior part of the bread its lightness, its airiness. You're going to have all those air pockets and bubbles in the bread. So part of why I chose this recipe is that it is ridiculously easy. So all we're going to do is we're going to have a well-floured surface. I have this like marble pastry board thing that I got for Christmas from my dad a while ago. Works really great for doughs because it's nice and cold. But any board you have is great. A regular cooking board is great. You want to make sure it's well floured. And frankly, the only reason you really need to put it on a board is to move from whatever surface you're working with closer to your oven. Because while we're doing this, the oven is preheating to 450 degrees, and the Dutch oven is in there. So if you're going to cook it in your Dutch oven, put the Dutch oven and the cover in the oven as it's preheating, and it's going to be in there for 30 minutes. If you're using another oven-safe pot or pan with a lid, put that in there. If you're using a pizza stone with a bowl, put the stone and the bowl, whatever you're going to cook the bread in, bottom line, that should be in the oven as the oven's preheating. And set a timer for 30 minutes so you know when it's time to go ahead and make the bread. So I'm gonna just flour my surface here. You want to make sure so the dough doesn't stick. Great, and a little bit on. You want some on your hands. The dough doesn't stick so much to your hands. Now, this is the really easy part. It's shaping the dough. If you remember earlier, I said that one of the things I like with this recipe is that you can use it as You can use this as one loaf, or you can make 6 individual loaves. I'm gonna make this one today as one large loaf. And ready, we're gonna just show you how incredibly easy that is, or where, I mean, I'm gonna, there's no royal we here. So basically you just take your dough out of your bowl, shape it so it looks bready. Bready, that's the technical term for this shape. You know, you kind of, so it's like a round, looks like a loaf you might buy in the grocery store or from your favorite bakery. And that's it. So there it is. There's a shaped loaf. You're gonna take your dough, you just wanna cover it so it doesn't dry out. I'm just gonna use the same piece of saran wrap I had it over with. And then that's it. So that's gonna sit here for another, in this case, 25 minutes and 52 seconds until the timer goes off. And then when that's ready, we're gonna take the bread and we're gonna put it in the oven. So go ahead and shape your dough, preheat your oven, get your cooking vessel nice and hot, and we'll see you in a little bit. So now it's time to put our dough into the Dutch oven or whatever container you're cooking in, and then into the oven to bake. So, got our dough here. Got our dough here. And very carefully, so this pan, remember, this pot has just been in the oven for 30 minutes at 450. It is very hot, so be very careful as you do this. I've got mine lined with some parchment paper. Probably should have told you that beforehand, but I'll write it in the comments. Just to make sure it doesn't stick. It generally doesn't, but err on the side of caution so you don't get all your nice, beautiful crust stuck to the bottom of your pot. So we're gonna go ahead and put the dough in the pan, cover it, and then put the pan in the oven. All right, so that's gonna bake at 450 for 30 minutes. So 450, 30 minutes. You want to put the cover on. And what's gonna happen now over the course of the next 30 minutes is basically that bread is gonna steam in your Dutch oven, pot, whatever you're using. And so you're gonna get this from the heat of the pan. It's gonna create pretty quickly a really nice, thick, crispy crust on the bottom of the bread. And then it's gonna rise, and as it rises, it's gonna steam, and that's what's gonna create some of that airiness in it. And then after it's been in the oven for 30 minutes, we're gonna come back, we're gonna remove the cover and put it in for another 7 to 15 minutes. So allow the top part of the crust to get nice and golden brown and crispy. So there you go. So in the oven, covered, 30 minutes at 450, and hang in there because we're almost there for our really delicious, wonderful bread. So go ahead, get your bread in the oven, and we'll see you soon. So it's time for the last step of the baking process. A few moments ago, the timer went off. The bread had been in the oven for 30 minutes, and it was time to take the lid off so the top could start to get nice and crusty and golden brown. I'm gonna try to show you what it looks like and see if we can see here in the oven. You can start to see, so you can see it looks like bread. That top has cracked open. It's starting to get that nice golden color and crispiness to the crust. So you're gonna let this part go for 7 to 15 minutes. I, being the good Anglican, shoot for the Via Media. I start with 11, but I keep an eye on it because you don't want the bread to get too dark where then it feels like it's burning. And that 7 to 15 minutes is gonna depend on a variety of factors. Are you doing one large loaf? Are you doing the 6 smaller loaves? How your oven's running, the container you're in, so just keep an eye on it. Now, you might be wondering, why is Father Dante sitting on the floor? Has he lost his mind? So the answer to that is clearly yes. But I'm on the floor for a particular reason. Those of you from the Diocese of Rhode Island who went to the January Learn and Lead event in 2019, when we were kicking off our programs for the Way of Love, might remember that I actually talked about baking bread is really what I'm trying to say. Baking bread as a spiritual practice, as something for me that's really good and helpful around Sabbath. And you might remember me saying that there are times when I actually sit on the floor and watch my bread bake. I love watching that dough that we've mixed together, those simple ingredients, take on a life of their own. They grow and they expand. The house smells amazing. I love watching that process. And as I do that, I often sit here and pray for someone who might get that extra loaf of bread, because my usual kind of bread baking makes 2 loaves. So this loaf here, as I've been sitting here and reflecting and thinking and watching this bread take on that final stage of baking, I've been offering prayers for all of us in this time, for the whole world, for people who are sick, for those who have died as a result of COVID-19, for our communities and congregations, that we might feel connected by the love we have for one another, rooted in our love we have for God, while we are physically separated from one another. So I invite you, as your bread is baking, as you're in that last 7 to 15 minute step, to sit on your oven floor. No, not on your oven floor. Sit on your kitchen floor. Don't sit on your oven floor. To sit on your kitchen floor and to pray. To pray for the world, to pray for yourself, to ask for God's blessing and God's grace to descend upon all of us at this time. So I'm going to go back to praying, and in just a few minutes, we'll be able to take this bread out of the oven. So here it is. Here is our no-knead, super easy, crusty loaf of bread. You can see it's got that nice golden, crispy color on the outside. Even the crust kind of cracked a little bit, so you get like what you see in stores. Now, one of the ways you know that bread is done cooking is you check the bottom of it. And one of the things you do when you check it is you tap it to see if it sounds hollow. So here, I'll give you a little idea of what that sounds like. See that nice hollow sound in the bread, and part of what that is it's just saying that that hollowness is created when a lot of that moisture comes out of the bread. I think that's true. We're just going to go with that. And if you know something about bread and that's wrong, go ahead and put something in the comments, and because we're all about learning here. So there it is. So you're going to want to let your bread cool before you slice into it. Don't be like me and just automatically try to dive in, but do let your bread rest a little bit. Let it cool, and then you can go ahead and you can slice it up and enjoy. Enjoy it on your own, enjoy it with others, dip it in olive oil and balsamic, make a sandwich out of it, whatever speaks to you. But there you go, you have your own homemade, crusty, delicious bread. So enjoy. Thanks for coming out for this inaugural episode of Dante's Kitchen, and we'll see you soon. Next up on the list are some hot cross buns by request of Grace Swinsky. So we'll see you back here soon when I try to make hot cross buns for the very first time. Take care, stay safe, and blessings to you all.